Hey, so this is our first time trying to stream live for our Q&A session. Let's see if it's working. Is it working? Is it working? It is live. We are live, people. Okay, so we are talking today. We thought it might be fun to jump on a live stream to share with some of you guys the conversations that we have when we are in our Q&A sessions for our team trainings, because there are a lot of agents out there who don't get this level of training. And we thought it just might be neat to share this. And if people like it, wonderful. So one of the big questions that we got today that we wanted to throw out here live was about the buyer's presentation process. And I will tell you, when I got into this business, coming from a sales background, in my mind, you would never imagine trying to sell someone's house without doing a listing presentation. But people all over this industry constantly think that they can try to help someone buy a house without doing a buyer's presentation. To me, they are two sides of the same coin. The important thing in a buyer's presentation is understanding the journey ahead, who does what, setting proper expectations, okay? And then being able to set the standards with each other and answer any questions before they come up, or try to really prevent problems. In this industry, people are kind of always saying, how do I show value? How do I show value? How do I show value? Well, you just become valuable and tell people about it, right? So there is a lot that goes into being a buyer's agent. And not does everyone need a buyer's agent? Some people who've maybe bought 10, 15 houses, they may not need a buyer's agent. That's okay too. But there are people who need help. We just had a story of someone who met one of our agents at an open house and is currently driving to every property because they don't have an agent helping them narrow things down and don't understand how it works. So that is a perfect example of somebody who would do really well. On top of that, understanding all of the scary parts of a transaction. Now, the scary parts of a transaction really differ from state to state. And here we have people from, I think, 4 different states. So there's only certain things I can talk about in generalities. But in general, how a transaction works is going to be, you're under contract, you do inspections, an appraisal happens if you have a loan, you try to negotiate, you finalize the loan, and then you close. I'm making that sound very, very simple. But there's a lot of work that has to happen before you even get to the under contract process. It is important that we know as agents how to explain this process because we understand how the process works. And we talk about learning the language of real estate and having scripts and understanding what to say when. And that is all very important, especially if you're new. But more important than a script for the sake of a script is understanding that we don't want to miss saying something important. So it's really an outline to kind of give us direction of where to go in a conversation. Because when you do say something over and over and over, it can feel repetitive to you. We have to remember it's the first time the other person is saying something. And I always find if someone doesn't have a really good process and a script and an outline of where they're going with the conversation, especially if you know something really well, and it's hard to remember that other people don't know the same things that you know. It's hard to remember when you didn't know at some point. We have to remember you might have heard it yourself say it 100 times or heard me say something 100 times. It's the first time that client is hearing anything. So they need to hear the whole thing in order to be prepared. Because people expect there to be problems. There's 293 steps of a transaction at a minimum. There's 100% guaranteed not going to be perfect because you have two parties who have opposing interests. The seller wants to make the most money. The buyer wants to spend the least amount of money, right? So they're opposite interests. You've got the buyer, the buyer's agent, the listing agent, the seller, the lender, the appraiser, the inspector, the closing attorney or escrow, title. You got all these things going on. It's not just one person moving in one direction. So there's potential for conflict. We can't prevent all issues that are happening, but we can have conversations about what to expect moving into this transaction and how can we best prepare and possibly prevent those issues. And then if we can't prevent issues because not everything is in our control, how do we fix? Because at the end of the day, the value that an agent has is being able to solve complex problems through the resources that they have. We don't need to know everything. And the reality is you can't know everything. You'll never know everything. What people want you to know is how to ask and get help to help them. So that is the purpose of the buyer's presentation or consultation. And it's really to understand what's important to them. And we have a full buyer's presentation, for our team. But the most important thing, and there's 2 pages that are important. Number 1, first is what's on your wish list. We have to understand exactly what they're looking for because yes, we can put things on the MLS, but we are calling hundreds of people a day looking for buyers for our sellers and sellers for our buyers. And the best deals are going to be found off market. Right? So if I don't truly understand exactly what you're looking for, what's a priority for you, then I may miss the property that's perfect for you. So if I'm going to ask somebody, for example, about location, and they're going to give me a city, and I'm going to ask them, why is that important to them? Is it for whatever reason, distance to work, whatever the case may be? So distance to work, do you mean miles or do you mean minutes? Because isn't there a difference depending on where you are in the city? So is it more important miles or minutes? So the important part is to keep on asking more questions. People say, well, what kind of price point are you looking at? Do people actually care about the price? Or do they care about their monthly payment? Correct. And so aren't there a lot of things that go into a monthly payment? Principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and then HOA has to be taken into consideration if you have one. So of those things, where do we as agents, can we come in and help negotiate in order to make that monthly payment more affordable for people? Price, we can negotiate on price. That's a principal amount. Interest, we can ask for seller concessions to buy down the interest rate. Conversations about whether that's a permanent buy down or a temporary buy down. Those conversations are had in conjunction with the lender. But who is the one who's out there asking for those concessions? So you have to understand how it works in order to have a basic conversation, in order to send them to a lender that you trust, who understands your market and your state and your laws and the risk, like in North Carolina, where we have non-refundable due diligence. So we need someone who understands that we don't just make offers without a full pre-approval. We need to know that we can close this thing before we go write a check that's non-refundable, right? So these are things as an agent, the buyer's presentation is not, ooh, look at me and how great I am. That's not, no one wants that. It's literally really, here's how it works. Let me tell you where it might be scary. Here might be some potential downfalls. Here's what we do to try and prevent it as much as possible. If we can't, here's our process for finding the answer and the solution, obviously within legal and moral boundaries, right? You can only do certain things, right? But then what is possible? How do I handle things? What is my network? Who do I have around me that I can go to in case I have questions? And so being a new agent, which a lot of us are new agents, the fear is, am I going to mess something up for a client? And that's a good fear to have. I want you to have that fear. I don't want you to be like, oh, it's whatever, fine, I go make a commission. No one wants that. We don't want that. We want you to be a little scared. That means you care. We want people who care. We want good agents who care. So the key is knowing how to ask a bunch of questions and keep on asking and keep on asking and keep on asking so that you can bring that to your mentor, your team leader, your coach, whoever it is, and have them help you maybe even ask better questions. A lot of times when we're mentoring and you guys ask me questions and you say XYZ, and I'm going to turn around and just ask you even more questions. Ask even more questions so that you know the right questions to ask in order to give people the answer that they want, because sometimes they're saying things that they don't actually mean. They're asking this question and they mean something totally different. So in the buyer's presentation, when you're talking about what's on your wish list, where do you want to live? Why is that important to you? Square footage, why is that important to you? Bedrooms and baths, why is that important to you? Right? Why is that important? So someone says, I want a 3-bedroom or I need a 4-bedroom. Well, what about if you had a 3-bedroom and a bonus? Is that okay? You just got to go deeper to understand, what do we need? I need a 2-car garage. Oh, is that for storage or for the car? Well, it's really for storage. Well, what if we had a 1-car garage and then we also had like a shed in the back for storage? So what configuration can work? Oh, I need a minimum of 0.4 acres. Tell me why. Tell me where that number came from. And also, doesn't it matter like how the acreage is set up? Do you care more about acreage as a number, or do you care about distance from neighbors? What if all your acreage is in the front and you have no backyard? What if all your acreage is in the back and is covered with trees? So tell me why this acreage matters to you, right? These are the questions that we need to understand, not because we're nosy, but how can we understand the mix of all the things you're looking for and what's more important, because we know unless you're building from the ground up, and even then, you're not going to get 100% of what you want when you buy a house. Well, you can if you have unlimited money. Most people don't. Okay. So if I had to choose this or this, which one's more important to you? Not to me. It's not my house. My job is to support you. And then, no, we're here and we want to get here. And you guys think this is the only way, but I'm telling you, we could do this one or that one or this way or this way. And here's the pros and cons of each of those paths and directions. And my job is to know that, present them to you, give you the options, and then support you in whatever decision that you make, legally and morally, right? That's the job of the buyer's agent. Then the next step is to talk about, here's all the steps of the transaction. What is an inspection report? What is an appraisal? How do we do that research beforehand? Where do you potentially stand to lose money? Right? What is a lender? What are the different types of loans? We're not going to like be a lender, but we can have a basic conversation. You should have an understanding of money. This is a financial transaction. There are hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't care if it's $100,000 house, still $100,000. So you need to understand money. You need to be able to talk money. And then when you're going through all these things and you're spending this real significant time with people, which you should do before you send them to a lender. None of you guys are so busy that you don't have time to talk to people before you send them to a lender, because that's when you establish the relationship. Because what if they go to the lender and they get a bad report from the lender, and then they're nervous and embarrassed, and they're going to like associate you with that feeling? But if you met with them first and said, hey, you know what? What is your situation? What is the monthly payment amount like that you're looking for? What do you have saved for down payment? You're having those conversations. You talk about money with people. If people are not comfortable talking about money with you, they don't trust you. And that's the whole point of that meeting, is to establish trust. Establish you're here to help them, because you are. I know all of you are. Okay. So we send them to that lender, but we say, hey, no matter what that lender says, it's never a no. Maybe not right now. Could be 6 months, 6 years. I don't care. I'm not going anywhere. You don't lose someone by pushing them away. Because the reality is, when someone comes to you and says, oh, I want to buy a house, I'm like, okay, cool, go talk to a lender. Do you know how that feels to them? Oh, you're not good enough to talk to me unless you're pre-qualified, right? Goes against most real estate training. Most real estate agents are going to say, oh, make sure they talk to a lender first. Don't talk to them, don't talk to a lender. No, we're not doing that. We're here to help people. It's not about just the sales, right? We truly want to help people on the path to homeownership. I know that all of you guys do. So we're going to have that conversation. And even if you're planting a seed that then blossoms in 5 or 10 years from now, you're building a relationship. Okay. So then at the end of that presentation, you need to have a very honest conversation with them about compensation, your professional fee. You should not be afraid to tell people what you charge for your services, even though this is a very hard conversation. The responsibility of paying the buyer's agent, is the buyer's responsibility. It's always been that way, but we had a whole huge lawsuit about it because no one would ever explain it properly. Because people were afraid to talk about getting paid for their work. They were afraid that if they told somebody that you're going to have to pay me for my work, that they're going to not choose you, they're going to pick somebody else. Now, there is a very real consideration of whether that buyer can afford to pay you out of their pocket for your professional fee. Now, in the situation that we're in right now, are we still seeing that in 99.9% of the time that the seller is paying all or most of the buyer's agent commission? They currently are, but that may shift, just like it shifts with new construction, builders. They offer a lot of compensation and bonuses when they don't have any buyers, and they love us buyers agents and we bring their buyers to them, which I think is a little weird. I get it, but I hope no one thinks that I'm bringing my buyer to your property because you're offering a bonus. If I bring my buyer to your property, it's because you have a good construction value, right? But whatever, that's a different conversation. But in a time where we're in COVID and people were sacrificing their firstborn essentially in order to get a house, all the terms are negotiable, including buyer's agency. Right now, we're in a more balanced or a slightly buyer's market. It's super easy to get, sellers to agree to pay for compensation because it's a marketing tool. It's a marketing tool for a seller to bring more people or less people to their house because they're making their house more or less affordable. If the seller does not contribute to buyer's agency fee, that means less people are going to be able to afford their house, which means less people will show up. So in a buyer's market where people are like, I really need more people to come, sellers are willing to contribute towards that fee. But at the end of the day, that responsibility is the buyer's responsibility, and you should have no problem telling them that if you've now just told them all the things that you do for them. If you haven't shown them any value, then I wouldn't pay you either. Correct? Why would we pay somebody to do something if they don't know what they're doing? So when you become a new agent, you also have to learn how to be a good real estate agent at the same time as you have to learn how to be a business owner and to be a salesperson. It's all those things at once. All. So in the case that you have a negotiated fee with your buyer of what your professional fee is, and let's say you go to look at a property and the seller is not contributing towards that fee, which they are not obligated to do, you have a couple options. You have the option that the buyer pays all of your fee or a portion of it if you choose to reduce some. You have the option to include it in seller paid closing costs, in which case the seller is paying for it anyways. You have the option to walk away, right? Those are options. And it really depends on your relationship with the buyer and their desire for the house. But these are things that you're not allowed to show houses to people without having this conversation, which is what the entire NAR lawsuit was about. And so the question isn't really about, should I have this conversation in the buyer's presentation? You have to have this conversation. You can't just send somebody a buyer's agency agreement and say, here's my professional fee, good luck. Oh no, I promise you won't have to pay anything. You can't say that. That was the whole point of the NAR lawsuit. So you can say, this is my professional fee. We're still seeing that 99% of the time the seller is paying for it as a marketing tool. It's not guaranteed. And if they don't want to pay a professional fee, then we still can negotiate. We can, do some and some. We can walk away from the property. Those are conversations you need to have in the buyer's presentation. You should not be having those conversations until you show people that you actually can help them and have value to them. And then, of course, getting any of your disclosures that are state specific done. In North Carolina, we have what's called a working with real estate agents disclosure. And basically, it is a form that was created by the Real Estate Commission as a consumer protection document to make sure that all buyers and sellers understand all of the ways that they can be represented by an agent. Because you guys remember from real estate school and having to learn all the special agent, dual agency, designated dual, unrepresented, like some people still don't understand that even after real estate school. Imagine how consumers are. So this document, we are required to get it filled out. We are required to fill it out and present it, have people sign it to show people like, hey, this document is for me to show you all the ways that a consumer can work with an agent. And here's what each of these mean. By checking these boxes, we're saying that we have had this conversation and you understand this. This working with a real estate agency document does not determine the type of agency relationship that we have. That's on the buyer's agency. We choose that relationship on the buyer's agency. This is a disclosure document that we are required to do to protect you as consumers. So, and that needs to be done at first substantial contact. Okay. And then you're talking about the buyer's presentation and all the things that are important to them. And then you do the buyer's agreement if they agree that they want to work with you. So in the matter of this is make sure that you are valuable, that you know how to help people, that you know how you protect people and have the right people in your corner in order to back that up. And then just go talk to more people, get in more conversations, be better as a real estate agent. And I promise you, you can have the business that you desire. So I don't know if there's any comments on the live. To me, it's not my desire. Okay. So I don't know if it. All right, perfect. Well, we will stop the stream now. That's our end of our Q&A session. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. We're going to come to you guys live a little bit more often here and hopefully answer some questions. If you guys ever have an idea for future questions for Q&A, go ahead and drop it in the chat, either on Facebook here or we're on a YouTube live. We're going to end up, we have to prove to TikTok that we are worthwhile of streaming on TikTok. So eventually we'll be on TikTok as well. But you guys put it in the comment section here if you have any other questions that you want us to try and answer on our Q&A session, and everybody can learn together. Otherwise, we will see you guys soon.